we have moved to playing online via webcam. And that means that you could join the fun. Find out how in the description, and you might find yourself featured on the channel. Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we've got some vintage for you as a ponder gets misstepped on the first turn. We have Justin on PO, now following up with a preordain. Joe Brennan, the reigning vintage world champion here, squaring off against the popular vintage streamer. A Mox Opal adds to his board presence, and Justin very close to being able to fire off a PO. Nobody's got a Wheel of Fortune. That is likely going to require Joe to Force of Will. Oh, he's got Flusterstorm. So much stronger. Maintaining that hard counter for an absolute must counter later on. A Narset, and that forces pitching Narset. Justin forces back, and now a misdirection. Narset does not arrive. Both players are hellbent. And Joe has a Deathrite Shaman on board. That'll make some dead cards for Justin, but also set a clock here for Joe and keep him in the race as far as mana goes. A Planeswalker coming down at 4. And that must be an Oko as we see a food token be created. And actually slightly surprising that this Deathrite Shaman wasn't elked. Gives Joe mana. Sets a little bit of a clock. Three damage coming across as this elk has been... as this food has been turned into an elk. And Justin going to be familiar with this matchup. Perhaps he's just going to decide to go aggro. We'll see if Joe can find a Tarmogoyf. That would completely... Actually, I guess with the Oko, that's fair. Justin probably very familiar with this matchup. Tarmogoyf traditionally a good answer to... Oh, and this was a long-term plan. He actually steals the Deathrite Shaman. An Ancestral Recall for Joe. Finds a hard-cast Force of Will. I don't think we've actually seen that on camera. A Deathrite Shaman stolen from Oko. I don't think we've seen Oko's ultimate ever used on camera. Traditionally, or typically, you're just going to see an awful lot of elking, and Oko gets replaced by another Oko, and just like that, a huge squad. Treasure Cruise give Joe a chance to rebuild here. And scooping it up, so I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. Joe looks to be on some type of bug control list. It would not be PO, probably some type of Leovold Narset strategy. This is an era where 4 Narsets were actually legal. And the winner of this tournament gets this beautiful, one-of-a-kind Black Lotus Tribute playmat, hand-painted. That is one of my favorite mats that I have ever made. Let me change this lighting here. I think that looks a little better. All right. It is one of my favorite mats that I've ever made. Actually, super high risk engraving. So all of that detail that you see, I actually hand painted the Black Lotus and then went back and engraved all of the fine detail. It's a 3-color composition. There's a green for the stem, a lilac-ish color for the, I guess that would be the stamen. I don't actually remember my botany, let me know. And then, of course, the lotus petals themselves with that deep purple to contrast beautifully with that rustic leather. If you are interested in a custom leather playmat, I am taking commissions through the website, and you can contact us through that, and we can make pretty much anything that you can imagine. Definitely have more time for custom commissions now that we're not currently doing a ELD Open every weekend. Usually when the world is functioning as normal, we have ELD Opens here every weekend, and the champion gets a custom leather playmat. Makes some of the events like insanely high EV, especially the lower attended ones. Of course, you go to a huge event and you win, and it's just, a nice payday. But, those smaller events, sometimes we might only get, 12 players or something for like a pauper event. The winner still gets a leather playmat, and that really skews the EV in that direction. It's always 100% payout, but the leather playmat's on top of that. So we've got a fetch into Deathrite Shaman, which gets mental misstepped. And now a Soul Ring. Of course, Joe not able to misstep back. He would have defended his Deathrite in all likelihood. Soul Ring sticking and is a very scary opening in Vintage. We got an Energy Flux off of Black Lotus, and that's going to essentially shut down that Soul Ring. A Time Walk. And that forest there is actually a proxy tropical island. This basic island looks like Therese Nielsen art. Enables a preordain. Energy Flux going to be a difficult card for Justin to work around, but it's a card that can potentially be worked around. Paradoxical Outcome doesn't really care how long the artifacts have been sitting around. This Ancestral Recall and Gush combination likely to be more of an obstacle for Justin, as Joe just has a fistful of card advantage at this point. PO, when playing against Energy Flux, is often able to just dump a ton of artifacts out of its hand, play PO, pick them up, put them back down again. But that's if it's only playing against the Energy Flux. When you've also got to contend with a full new grip of cards, it's a much different calculation. This Tarmogoyf gets shut down, and now a Narset arrives for Justin. And Narset finds Ancestral Recall, threatening to swing this game way back into Justin's favor. Narset's going to cut off a lot of the more explosive things that Joe could do, though he has already used Ancestral and Gush. Mox Emerald, Underground Sea, into a Collector Oof. And that is a very significant threat. So Collector Oof, even more of a problem is now you can't just sandbag those artifacts and enchantments. I'm sorry, the artifacts for PO. Ancestral Recall does resolve for Justin. That Pyroblast not going to be able to remove this green creature. And at this point, he's likely looking for Lightning Bolt. This list is from the end of last year. As you see, we've got multiple Narsets still in the decks, and a Merchant Scroll grabs a Force of Will. Gonna need to really make sure whatever tries to clear this Collector Oof Manages to get him off the board. That Force of Will very likely to be spent protecting him. Oh, here we go. Or perhaps protecting this Mana Gorger Hydra. Assassin's Trophy, immediately targeting it. Force of Will, getting 2 more counters. So now, with 2+1/+1 counters on it, and Mana Gorger Hydra fit in perfectly into the metagame at this point, given that there was Oko running wild and turning it into an elk. Not the most exciting thing when it has all those +1/+1 counters on it. Those do stick around. So kind of an Oko-proof threat. Of course, you lose the additional +1/+1 counters that you would yield from additional spells, but, you know, if in a world full of elks, the larger elk will reign supreme. This Collector Oof chipping away at Justin's life total. He's been fortunate to be able to get a ton of artifacts. A Leovold is cast and pyroblasted. Doesn't even go onto the stack, just pitched him right into the bin. And now Mana Gorger Hydra coming down again. Looking to square off against this Collector Oof, stem the bleeding. And a Sensei's Divining Top. Perhaps Justin's last card here. I actually can't imagine what it is that this that this Sensei's Top is going to be worthwhile. It can't tap to draw, and he'll have to pay 2. I think he's just playing it to grow the Mana Gorger Hydra. Not willing to trade the Hydra for the Collector Oof. Pretty bold attack. Gataxian Probe. Spell Pierce. Grows the Hydra even more. Just restricting Justin's mana. Bug typically doesn't have much in the way of reach. We'll see if this is a 5-color list. We got a Narset growing this Mana Gorger Hydra. And it's going to dig to try and find some type of answer. There's an Assassin's Trophy. He's got the answer. He's got the life total. He can take a hit from this Hydra. Joe has drawn repeated Assassin's Trophies here in this game. Justin's got this full mana base. Narset gets cleared. And Assassin's Trophies fired off right away. Not a mystery. Thanks to being drawn off the Narset, and now Collector Oof swings one more time, doing the final 2 points of damage. If that Assassin's Trophy wasn't public knowledge, that's very likely it would have been kept in hand. If Justin, for example, drew a blocker, he could have played like another Mana Gorger Hydra and then swung with the original, ending up in a situation where Assassin's Trophy could clear the way for the final 2 points of damage. But no bluffing necessary. All the cards are on the table. And when the dust settled, Joe picks up game number 2, forcing a third game here. This bug strategy really designed to try and have the best game possible for the PO match. At a certain point, tweaking your PO deck for the mirror gives way to a complete strategy shift. I think at this point in the metagame, PO was really overall kind of considered to be the best deck, and finding ways to consistently put up better than a 50-50 result against it was a difficult challenge. And cards like Leovold and Narset are some of the most important cards versus it. Remember, PO does cost 4 mana, and there are plenty of times where you just get blown out on the first turn before you'd even be able to cast any of those 3 casting cost cards. But there's a pretty large subset of games where things just kind of go on, and if you have cards that can truly let you stabilize as you try and maintain control over that menace, you're going to be in a much better space than having to counter every single dangerous card that they draw, shutting off their cantrips, shutting off their certainly cards like Wheel of Fortune and Time Twister are significantly worse for your opponent when you've got a way of stopping them from drawing cards. We've got a new life counter once we kick back up with live Magic the Gathering from the store. We do have a malfunction going on here with this particular app. We've since found a better app for the iOS. A Mock Sapphire enables this preordain, and Joe gets a Mock Jet and a Black Lotus. So really explosive start. Floating some mana. Time Walk. And Collector Oof. Force of Will, pitch Narset. Flusterstorm after all of those cards. That final blue mana being completely used efficiently. And now the life total chips away. Down to 16 for Justin. Ponder not finding the goods. Passing the turn back. Collector Oof. The type of creature that's going to be totally fine just hitting for 2 over the next 7 turns. Justin down to 14. Wasteland. An ominous card, as these artifacts not going to be useful for Justin, and his non-basic lands going to have an expiration date on them thanks to this first Wasteland. Now down to 12. And now 10. A Deathrite Shaman can more than double the clock here. A Preordain. Not happy with those 2 cards. The third one not gonna help. Down to 8. Deathrite Shaman ready to get in on this action. Underground Sea is prepared. Very nice sequencing there for Joe. A lot of people would potentially get caught trying to crack a fetch land with some bad timing for some type of flashback effect. And oh, look at this. Justin showing he actually had the answer to the Collector Oof, but just didn't have the mana, as Joe takes this one down with a deck designed and tweaked to beat PO, and he has succeeded at that. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.